Hello, Mohsen Jamal and you watch Afghan News. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon on Wednesday named Slovak diplomat Jan Kobes as his next special envoy to Afghanistan, replacing Stefan de Mistura of Sweden, whose tenure expires on December 31st. Kobes, 59, who speaks 5 languages and graduated from a Moscow International Relations Institute, is a former Slovakian foreign minister who also has had a lengthy career as an international official, and most recently he has been head of the UN Economic Commission for Europe. The United Nations has no peacekeepers in Afghanistan, where US and NATO troops are battling Taliban insurgents, but the UN mission known as UNAMA engages in political support and aid work, compiling closely watched reports on civilian casualty figures from the Afghan conflict. The United Nations announcement of Kobes' appointment described the Afghanistan job as one of the most challenging duty stations that will be changing hands for the third time in 4 years. Britain will eventually be proud of its role in the Afghanistan war, but it could be another decade before its gains are realized, the head of the armed forces said in an interview published in Thursday's British Times. General Sir David Richards, the chief of the British Defence Staff, admitted tactical mistakes had been made, but that he had every expectation history would judge the war positively. Richards said he was the first to concede that mistakes had been made, but pointed out that no terrorist attack had been launched out of Afghanistan since the campaign began 10 years ago. The general considered that policymakers and military leaders were guilty of neglecting Afghanistan during the parallel campaign launched in Iraq in 2003, but added that a strategy had been correct since US President Barack Obama's 2009 troop surge. Britain will withdraw 500 troops from Afghanistan by the end of next year, leaving 9,000 in the country. President Hamid Karzai's choice as Afghanistan's new central bank governor says the state may recover 80% of the $850 million it has spent to bail out the country's biggest commercial lender. Nurullah Dilawari, who headed the Afghanistan Bank from 2004 to 2007, has been chosen by Karzai to return to the post. The president's spokesman, Hamid Ilmi, said on Wednesday the appointment, which must be confirmed by parliament, ends a 5-month vacancy that has showed the government's efforts to handle the collapse last year of Kabul Bank, which failed because of illegal loans to its shareholders, including brothers of Karzai and first Vice President Mohammad Qasim Fahim. Dilawari worked for more than 20 years at the UA's commercial banks, serving as Vice President of Lloyds Bank California, according to his biography on the investment agency website. The Afghanistan Bank's previous governor, Abdul Qadir Fitrat, fled to the United States in June, saying he had received threats over his calls for prosecutions in the case, but Karzai's office said that Fitrat had fled after being summoned for questioning over his role in managing the aftermath of the scandal. Russia has threatened to deploy missiles to target the U.S. missile shield in Europe if the United States fails to allay the country's concerns about its plans. In a televised statement on Wednesday, Dmitry Medvedev, the Russian president, said that his country would have to take military countermeasures if the United States continues to build the shield without legal guarantees that it will not be aimed against Russia. The United States plan calls for placing land and sea-based radars and interceptors in European locations, including Romania and Poland, over the next decade and upgrading them over time. In response to Medvedev's statement, Captain John Kirby, a U.S. Pentagon spokesman, said that it's worth reiterating that the European missile defense system is not aimed at Russia. Anders Fogh Rasmussen, the NATO Secretary General, also said he was very disappointed with Russia's threat to deploy missiles. A brief attempt by Egypt's military to interpose a ceasefire between riot police and civilians near the epicenter of protests against military rule has disintegrated into another night of violence around Cairo's Tahrir Square. Police from the inter-ministry's Central Security Forces appear to fire an unprovoked barrage of tear gas at a large crowd gathered on Muhammad Mahmoud Street on Wednesday afternoon, witnesses said, despite a truce that had settled and after the arrival of army vehicles and religious scholars during a tour of Tahrir Square during the day Amar Helmi, the health minister, acknowledged that security forces had used live ammunition, but he denied swirling rumors that they had also fired tear gas mixed with a nerve agent. At least 35 people have died and 3,250 have been wounded across Egypt since violence broke out on Saturday, the health ministry announced on Wednesday. The ceasefire in Cairo was reportedly negotiated by religious scholars from Al-Azhar University, the historical seat of Sunni theology, after Sheikh Ahmad Al-Tayyib, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, called on the riot police to halt their attacks on protesters. Yemeni President Ali Abdullah Saleh has signed a deal to hand over his powers under an agreement brokered by the Gulf Cooperation Council. The deal, signed on Wednesday, will see Saleh leave office in 30 days, making way for Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi, the Yemeni vice president, to negotiate a power transfer with the opposition in return for a promise of immunity from prosecution. As part of the deal, Saleh will retain the honorary title of president, yet his deputy is expected to form and preside over a national unity government before presidential elections take place within 90 days. Saleh, who has ruled Yemen since 1978, during the ceremony aired by Saudi state television, spoke of the cost of the uprising to Yemen, but did not mention the demands of protesters who called for his ouster in the state. He referred to the protest as a coup and called a bombing of his palace mosque that seriously wounded him a scandal. After signing the deal, Saleh said his government welcomes the partnership with what he called the brothers in the opposition and pledged a real partnership with them. And that activists say at least 41 people have been killed across Syria over the past 24 hours, amid warning by Turkey that President Bashar al-Assad's crackdown on dissent threatened to drag the whole region into turmoil and bloodshed. The dates were reported as Abdullah Gül, the Turkish president, during a speech during a state visit to Britain on Wednesday, accused the Ba'ath regime continues to use oppression and violence on its own people. Separately, Alain Juppé, the French foreign minister, said he would seek an EU backing for humanitarian corridors in Syria to alleviate the suffering of the population. After a meeting with Burhan Ghelon, the head of the Syrian National Council in Paris on Wednesday, Juppé ruled out the possibility of military intervention to create a buffer zone in northern the country. Syria came under increased diplomatic pressure when the United Nations General Assembly's Human Rights Committee condemned its security crackdown in a vote backed by Western nations and a number of Arab states. That is all for now. Thanks for joining us.